Going into the 2025 college football season, Texas had an interesting quarterback room. After losing their phenom Quinn Ewers to the NFL draft, they were going to bring in Arch Manning. He was honestly supposed to be better than Quinn Ewers was when it's all said and done, and then they also had two guys who were blue chip recruits in KJ Lacey and Trey Owens. But the eventual backup for Texas ended up not being either of those two. It ended up being a player by the name of Matthew Caldwell. Texas would end up being his fourth school, and he was a late addition to their 2025 portal class, and in his few moments of action so far this year, he's had an incredible impact. He completed a pass against Florida when Arch's helmet got knocked off, and then after Manning got hurt against Mississippi State, Caldwell threw the game-winning touchdown pass. In today's video, I want to introduce you to Texas's bizarre backup quarterback, Matthew Caldwell. We're going to go through the 4 different schools that he's been at, how he became a big-time player, and his best moments in a Texas uniform so far. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about Matthew Caldwell. Okay, so in order to understand how he got to this point, we first need to go back in time. When it comes to sports cliches, it's often said that the most popular player on a football team is the backup quarterback. For a little while, it looked to be true. In the summer of 2019, Matthew Caldwell faced the challenge of earning respect from a new team, as growing up in the state of Alabama, he would decide to transfer to Auburn High School. This is obviously prime War Eagle territory, and after a few hours of trying to dig up information, I could find nothing on this guy before his last 2 years of high school. He eventually won the starting job for Auburn High School, saying, quote, "It meant a lot getting the opportunity to play because that's all I really wanted. I came here and got that opportunity around Game 5 in 2019 and made the most of it." Caldwell worked his way into the starting role in 2019 after he ended up transferring, but on October 25th, he would end up getting hurt. He was now going to have a 6 to 9 month recovery timeline, and he said the hardest part was having to sit still while his teammates went about their business. Although Caldwell was sidelined, he was by no means taking it easy. Auburn's head coach said that he worked tirelessly to rehab his knee with the same approach he had during the season and went from the backup to their starter. His coach said, quote, "He had already kind of faced some disappointment early in the season, and when he got hurt, he carried that same attitude. He had a great dream and a great goal of being a good player and to play at the next level, and he wasn't going to let an injury hold him back. It was going to spark his fire to work even harder." He also ended up getting some good news on the recruiting front, as before the senior season, he'd receive his first scholarship offer from Austin Peay. He said, quote, "It means a lot to me. It's something I've been working for since I was a kid, and now I finally have the opportunity to play at the next level, but the work doesn't stop here, it's all just beginning." During the 2020 season, he had a long road back to playing, but he would answer each and every obstacle along his way, and he had an unforgettable season. He ended up throwing for just under 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns, while rushing for 6 more scores on the ground, and he led them to the Class 7A state title game. They were in Bryant-Denny Stadium to face off against the defending state champs in Thompson High School, which had dominated opponents throughout all of 2020. Despite the challenge, Caldwell and his teammates stepped up to the moment, and they came up short 29-28, but he kept his head high after the game. He said, quote, "It was a fun journey back. The ACL and meniscus tear last year really kind of set me back physically, but it didn't affect me mentally at all. I think it made me stronger." Nearly 1 week after Campbell's high school career ended, he decided where he was going to play college football at. He would turn his attention to Jacksonville State, as he had signed with the Gamecocks in December, saying that he was drawn to them because they were a football town and the coaching staff's drive. He said, quote, "It's the best staff in America, and I haven't FaceTime or talked to any coach at JSU that wasn't all in on the program and my future. They have a winning staff, and it seems like it's going to be a great fit for me." He chose Jacksonville State over offers from Gardner-Webb and Austin Peay, and as I said, as a senior, he threw for just under 2,000 yards and had 26 combined touchdowns. He was going to arrive at FCS Jacksonville State, and hopefully he'd have a good career there. So let's talk about that. As Caldwell arrived at Jacksonville State, he was unfortunately not really able to make much of an impact. He literally did not play a single snap for the Gamecocks and would decide to transfer ahead of the 2022 season. Obviously, nobody was talking about him nationally, but he would decide to transfer over to Gardner-Webb. During the 2022 season, he would serve as the primary backup for the Bulldogs, as he saw action in 6 total games. Caldwell would pass for 374 yards with 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions, while also rushing for 2 scores. He helped them reach the FCS playoffs, and then after that in 2023, he'd play a little bit more. This time he would pass for 940 yards with 7 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and then had 1 more rushing score on the ground. Through his 2 years at Gardner-Webb, he was a decent player, but he would decide to transfer ahead of the 2024 season. He He'd go from the FCS level back up to the FBS level, as he would decide to go over to the Troy Trojans. I do not believe he was supposed to be a big piece for them, as Goose Crowder was supposed to be the starting guy for them. As we flash forward to October 22nd of 2024, Crowder would be announced that he would miss the end of the season with an upper body injury, and all of a sudden, this was going to be a chance for Caldwell. After not initially winning the starting job, he would enter the game against South Alabama, and they were behind 19-0, but he would get a little bit going. From there, he would take over for the remainder of the season as he'd start their last 5 games and lead Troy to a 3-2 record. With him under center, they scored 28 or more points in all of those games, and he would throw for 1,608 yards and 13 touchdowns. He averaged about 235 yards per game, which would have ranked 4th in the Sun Belt, and he was even once named the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Week. His best game of the season would come against Louisiana, as he would throw for 4 touchdowns in that one, and he was just really solid in the back half of November, and he also had 4 total touchdowns against Georgia Southern. In total, Caldwell passed for 1,608 yards with 13 touchdowns and 8 picks, and also had 47 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. He was honestly pretty solid for them. Then on April 21st, he would decide to enter the transfer portal for the third different time, and he would have a couple of options in terms of where he could go. Many people predicted he would go back to play for Auburn and be a depth piece for them, but then all of a sudden, he would decide to choose the Texas Longhorns. This was somewhat of a shocker for most people who were involved in this, as why would he not go back home to Auburn, especially with them potentially needing some quarterback help? Well, it looks like he did end up picking the right school, as he would arrive at Texas and would compete with Trey Owens and KJ Lacey for that backup job. Somehow, some way, Caldwell would end up winning it, and he would appear in their first 3 games. He completed 2 passes against San Jose State, ran the ball once against UTEP, and completed 4 passes against Sam Houston State. Through the first month of the season, he hadn't really done much, but at the same time, this was truly Arch Manning's team. But then against Florida, we all figured out who this guy was. I know personally, I was watching this game, and obviously Texas was losing, and all of a sudden, instead of Lacey or Owens coming out, it was this Caldwell guy. He completed his 1 pass for 26 yards, which was a huge play at the end of the game, and honestly kept them in it. After that, Arch Manning was not able to execute, but everyone was sort of wondering, who the heck was this Campbell guy? We would then get another taste of him just a couple of weeks later, as on the road against Mississippi State, Arch Manning was finally starting to figure it out, but all of a sudden, he'd go down with a concussion after a huge hit, and now he would have to win the game. In overtime, Caldwell would throw 1 pass, and it would be completed in the side of the end zone to Emmett Mosley. He was another fellow spring transfer, and obviously there was some sort of connection there, because after review, it was called a touchdown. Texas would end up winning the game against Mississippi State, and he went 1 of 1 for 10 yards and a touchdown. His QBR had to be absolutely insane after that. Steve Sarkisian ended up talking about Campbell being recruited there and said, quote, "What I liked about him on visit was his demeanor and his approach to it. It didn't seem too big for him here, and he didn't feel entitled by any means. He was a guy who just wanted an opportunity." What's awesome is he's gotten 2 opportunities in the last couple of weeks and made 2 crazy plays. Last weekend, going into their Vanderbilt game, there was some talks about Arch not playing, so in that case, Campbell might have had to been the guy, and 24/7 Sports analyst Eric Henry said, quote, "The biggest thing that stood out about Matthew Campbell in limited snaps is his poise while stepping into pressure situations. Both of his appearances against Power 4 teams have been in high leverage moments, and he's delivered. Arch Manning loses his helmet, and Caldwell is pressed into his 2nd and 22 when they're trying to find a game-winning touchdown, and proceeds to deliver a dime to Wingo for a first down. The other instance, he has to come in overtime, and he throws the eventual game-winning pass to Emmett Mosley. So yeah, in 2 reps, that is pretty insane to me, and so far in the year, Caldwell has thrown 8 of 11 passes for 85 yards and 1 touchdown. It does look like Arch Manning is figuring it out though, so I don't think Caldwell will get on the field much the rest of the year, but Texas fans will always remember those 2 plays. Honestly, Caldwell is one of the more bizarre backups in college football, as he was never really supposed to be here, and like a lot of players in this modern era, had a long winding journey. But what do you guys think? If you're a Texas fan, what do you think of Matthew Caldwell, and who's another backup quarterback in college football I could take a look at next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.